Welcome back. It's time for Unit 4, video number 2. We'll be looking at content that you can find in your textbook on section 12.2. Again, we'll focus on determining markup amounts, but we're going to change our focus this time, and rather than base those markups on cost as we did in section 1, we're going to base them on selling price. All right, so let me open this PowerPoint. Let me share it with you, and let's get into this. All right, there's your header, section 12.2 in play. Now, if you're thinking about something as 100%, that 100% would be the selling price. Again, I'll let you read the screen. It gives you when might be more advantageous to base your markups on selling price relative to what we did in the last section, basing your markups on cost. All right, so in this particular section, it's all about selling price, markups based on what we have as selling price. We'll go right into problems and take a look at what happens. This problem kind of looks familiar. You've got Target paying $60 for a pair of jeans. I can walk into the store, buy them at $80, and the question says, well, what's the dollar markup? Well, hey, that's no different than what we've done before. That's the difference between cost and selling price. But that second question now, if it says what's your percent markup based on selling price, we will see a difference. All right. So that's what we worked with before, selling price based on cost plus markup. And again, I'm not sure you needed the formula. I think pretty intuitively there, you and I could have figured out that it's a $20 markup on that pair of jeans. If you are now calculating the markup percentage, all right, it's important to realize that that formula we saw before kind of gets modified now. The markup is not being based on cost as it was in section 1. It's being based on the selling price of the item, which in this particular context is the $80. So if we're going to find out what that markup percentage is, notice that we put a 20 in there that we found earlier, and the 80 is going in as selling price. Grab your calculator, pop some buttons, and you find out that the markup percentage based on selling price for this particular example is 25%. It's not harder math than we did in section 1. The base number is going to be a different player in that we've replaced cost as a base number with selling price as a base number. Another example for us to take a look at, Frank's is going to buy a sofa. It's going to cost him $800. He wants to make a profit of 80% based on selling price. And at this point in time, we don't really know his selling price. So if we fire that formula that we've been looking at as this unit progresses, where we determine selling price by taking cost and adding markup, all right, we do have information about his cost. It's $80. But what we don't know is what his selling price is. And it's important to realize that when we get down there to representing values, we're going to let S be unknown, and that lets M be a form of an unknown as well, and that is 80% of that selling price. Welcome to algebra. Let's move all those S terms to the left side. So we'll subtract 0.80S. That gets us to 0.20S. Grab your calculator. It's about to divide by 0.20. And you and I are going to find out that the selling price for Frank's sofa, when you and I were to walk in and buy it, would amount to $4,000. So again, a little bit more algebraic than we saw in the first example, in that what we were basing our selling price on was an unknown quantity. We're not tremendously terrorized because we realize that we can combine like terms, represent markup as an unknown expression, kind of like we played around in a previous unit. All right. What do we got going on here? It says, what was the dollar markup? Well, now, we already know that he's going to sell it for $4,000. So there's your base formula. 4,000 is the selling price. It cost him $800 to get it. And you guessed it, he's marking the sofa up $3,200. Sounds pretty hefty to me. All right, Dirk's got that tennis racket, man. He's selling it for $600. He wants to make a 40% markup based on selling price. We're asked to find out how much does he mark it up in dollars, and then secondly, how much did the tennis racket cost Dirk? All right, well, what do we know? Well, we know the markup is simply a percentage of selling price. In this problem, we happen to know the selling price. It's $600. So we're simply going to calculate 40% of $600, and we're going to realize that the markup on this racket for Dirk is going to be $240. Again, I think intuitively, it's not hard for us to figure out what the racket cost Dirk, But if you want the comfort of a formula, you certainly can roll with it. The selling price is $600. We just figured out that his markup was $240, and that basically tells us that if we subtract out, it costs Dirks $360 to get the tennis racket into his store. So as you're playing through here, it's important to realize that, sometimes the formula are our lifeblood. Sometimes I'm not so sure that we really need to formula to work out like we saw in that last problem. It's pretty intuitive to just go ahead and subtract and find the difference between cost and selling price. All right, some words on the screen from yours truly. Since this chapter, or this unit, I should say probably more accurately, talk about finding markups based on one of two things, based on either cost to the retailer or the selling price of the retailer, it's important for you and I to realize that we'll use the same context to solve, but it is significant that we read the problem critically and find out whether we're asked to find markup based on cost or markup based on selling price. They are not interchangeable, although there are ways to go from one to the other. Interesting that you brought that up, Coach, because here's what we're going to look at next. If by chance you have calculated the markup based on cost and you want to contemplate the markup based on selling price, here's a handy dandy formula for you to make use of. All right, so we could find a markup based on cost from the problem, maybe doing what we were asked to do previously, and then we could compare it and create, if you will, a markup based on selling price. Here we go. Tim's Toys go buy the Lego set from its supplier. So Tim's cost is $80. He's going to sell it when I walk into the store for $120. So the first question says, what's his dollar markup? Again, I don't know that I need a formula. It looks to me like it's $40. But if you like formulas, if they give you peace and comfort, there's your old friend. Selling prices found by taking cost and adding markup. Throw it in. Oh my gosh, I got it right. $40 is the markup. Second challenge on this is to find Tim's markup based on cost. Okay, now that's actually what we looked at in the first video, or the first section of this unit. So we're going to go ahead and rock and roll. Notice we're basing our markup on the cost of the item. All right, so we are finding that Tim's $40, which is the value for the actual dollar figure of markup. If we're finding markup percentage based on cost, it's 80 times M, where M is the unknown markup percentage. I can recognize that at 50%. Maybe you could too, but if you're not, grab a calculator. And you and I have now realized that the markup based on cost for that Lego set at Tim's is 50%. Now, if you want to convert it to markup based on selling price, you know what? We could just do it clean by using our formula where 40 is equal to 120 times M, and we could calculate it clean. If you want to use the conversion formula, here it is. All right, now it's important that we pull back that markup based on cost that we just looked at. Now, be careful here. You want to put it in and you want to operate as a decimal number on that thing. So it's 50% as 0.50, denominator 1 plus that 0.50. Yes, you guessed it. That gets us to there. 0.50 over 1.50. You and your calculator can crunch. And again, it's not a clean divide. You've got a 3 rep of 10. And okay, we'll call it 33 and 33 hundredths of a percent. 33 and a third if you want to be exact. All right, so we can convert from markup on cost to markup on selling price by formula, or we could do it clean out by just saying 40 is equal to 120 times the markup percentage, and we would have gotten the same value. If you want to go the other way and you want to go from markup on selling price and create markup on cost, we've got another formula for you, and we'll walk it through for an example. Here we go. I like this. It's chocolate. So Carly's Candies buys this chocolate from Lindor at $8 a pound, sells it when I walk in for $12 a pound. First question, how much is she marking it up in dollars? Again, I don't know if I need a formula, but it's okay. Here it is. $4, that's a $4 markup per pound as it relates to the chocolate. All right, next question says, what's Carly's markup on selling price? So we'll pull this back and we'll take a look at 4 as the dollar value for the markup, and the selling price for her chocolate is the $12. So if you want to find your percentage, Here you go. 4's going in for markup, 12's going in for selling price, and your unknown is M, the markup percentage. Grab a calculator, and you're going to see that in this context, again, it's at 0.3 repetent. So we'll go again. We'll call it 33.33%, 33 1/3% if you want to call it clean out, accurate, and exact. Nothing that we haven't done previously. Now, if you want to calculate that as a markup percentage based on cost, if we played from here, we could simply go 4 equals 8M and go ahead and calculate M. If you want to make use of the formula that's introduced in section 2, here it is. All right. Again, recall that we've calculated the selling price markup, and it was that 0.333 forever. So there's where we're going to run. Just as before, make sure you put that in as a decimal number. On the denominator, it's 1 minus that value. Dell's calculator said that's 0.33333 over 0.66666. And if that looks like a half, that's darn close to you. And that would be 50%. So the markup based on cost for that particular example would have turned out to be 50%. Not hard, not different than what we're doing. Again, the caveat for us to work on is, what is that markup based on? Is it going to be based on cost, as we saw in section 1, or is it going to be based on selling price, as we saw in section 2? And that wraps down video 2 from unit 4. I'll be back soon with video 3. See you then.